Your DAU is climbing, but is anyone actually using your product? Or are they just opening it up and immediately closing it right back down? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tearing down a recent interview with a top Y Combinator partner that is going to completely destroy the way you look at your product data.
Let's start with a massive pain point the expert brought up right away. You know the feeling. You look at your standard analytics dashboard and think, hey, the line's going up and to the right, we're crushing it. Well, that's often a total illusion. Those standard aggregate graphs, they are completely hiding the actual reality of your users.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you rely heavily on aggregate metrics, things like daily active users or monthly active users, you are essentially lumping everyone together into one giant bucket. And the expert emphasized that this literally blinds founders. You end up with zero idea of how individual users are interacting, what specific features they're touching, or how often they're actually logging in to do something valuable.
So, as the interview laid out bare, your aggregate metrics are probably lying to you. They hide a pretty brutal truth. Sure, the overall numbers might be swelling, but your individual users, they might not be enjoying or really using the product at all.
So what's the actual fix here? Well, we're unpacking the ultimate tool revealed in our expert session. It's called the dot plot. Think of it as this incredible magnifying glass. It gives you the granular individual behavior, but it still steps back to give you that macro view of your entire product's health. It is just pure, unfiltered reality.
And the mechanics of building this thing are surprisingly straightforward. It's basically a visual spreadsheet. Step 1, you just assign each row to an individual user. Step 2, every single column represents a time period, and tracking by days is usually your best bet. Step 3, you literally just drop a dot into the cell every single time that specific user completes an action that represents actual value.
And this brilliantly illustrates the point using a Spotify-style music app example from the interview. Let's say our chosen value event is simply listen to a song. So user number 1 listens on Monday and Tuesday, completely skips Wednesday, and then comes back on Thursday and Friday. You can even draw a little ring around the dot on a user's very first day to mark when they onboarded. Just like that, boring server logs suddenly become a literal map of human behavior.
So the crucial point is, when you just sit and stare at this grid, your brain naturally detects patterns that aggregate charts completely gloss over. You might look at it and instantly see, wow, we have a cluster of users exclusively listening on weekdays while they're at the office, and a totally different segment who only show up on weekends. Or even worse, if you see rows where a user gets that first day ring and then never ever gets another dot, yeah, you instantly know your onboarding is completely broken.
But as the expert noted, you can take this so much further and add incredible depth. Instead of just plain dots, you can drop in letters, like put an S if they use the search function or a P if they joined a public playlist. You can even color code the rows by demographic, like separating iOS users from Android users. Then, when you sort the rows to only look at folks who triggered that P playlist feature, you might unlock a deep causal relationship that shows you exactly why those specific people are sticking around.
During the interview, there was this absolutely amazing anecdote about Max Levchin back at the very dawn of PayPal. So they had this massive fraud problem, right? And no algorithms to detect it yet. Their solution? They literally just plotted the transaction data visually and had humans sit there and stare at the screens. That's it. Our pattern recognition is so ridiculously powerful that people could just point to a cluster and say, hey, that visual pattern right there is different. That's probably fraud. Dot plots are tapping into that exact same biological superpower.
Now, I know exactly what you're thinking right now. You're saying, okay, this is great for my first 50 users, but what happens when we hit hypergrowth? How on earth am I supposed to track thousands or millions of rows?
Let's move to how this builds and scales, even if you have a billion users. The experts shared their own experience working on Google Photos. To make dot plots work at that massive scale, they used sampling. They would literally print out physical pieces of paper with dot plots for hyper-specific cohorts. So one piece of paper might track a sample of iOS users in France, while another tracks web users in the United States making over $80,000 a year. And then the team would just sit around the office, staring at these printouts to draw exact, hardcore conclusions about user behavior.
Section 1. B2B churn warning signs.
Now, you might assume this granular dot tracking is strictly for consumer apps, but no way. It is an absolute lifesaver for B2B enterprise products, too. The expert shared an incredible hardcore data point about this. A Y Combinator startup signed this massive name-brand enterprise customer to an $80,000 a year contract. They sold them 10 seats. On paper, everything looks like a massive success.
But beneath the surface, it was secretly doomed to churn.
Visually, the discrepancy was frankly horrifying. Because out of the 10 seats the enterprise client paid for, only 3 seats were ever actually activated. Those other 7 seats, just completely dormant right from day one.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the behavioral truth it exposed. Even if you zoom in on those 3 active users, their usage was totally sporadic. Literally nobody used the product more than 2 days per week. And eventually, the internal champion who actually bought the software left the company, and the new boss instantly dropped the renewal. If they'd been using a dot plot, it would have violently flagged this jeopardized account months before the renewal date even came up.
Section 2. How to build yours and avoid mistakes. Okay, we've seen the power of this, so let's shift over to execution. And I'm going to be a pretty strict guide here. Do not use this to pad your ego. The biggest mistake you can make is charting vanity metrics. Do not put a dot on the plot just because a user opened the app or signed in. That tells you nothing. You absolutely must track a real value event. The second major trap is using lazy timeframes. If you stretch your columns to represent entire weeks instead of days, you completely destroy the behavioral resolution you're trying to capture in the first place.
But honestly, don't let the setup intimidate you at all. At its core, it's just a log visualization tool. You just parse your server logs and map them onto a 2D grid. The expert even pointed out that modern AI coding tools can whip a basic version of this up for you in about 10 minutes. In fact, until you hit hundreds of users, this dot plot should quite literally be your primary product dashboard.
Now, what's really interesting is how you layer this. The ultimate strategy is pairing the dot plot alongside your cohort retention curves. The retention curves give you the macro view, right? They tell you if users are sticking around. But the dot plots, they give you the absolute crucial micro view. They show you exactly how those users are actually spending their time. When you use them together, you get this perfect 360-degree view of your product's actual health.
All right, to wrap up with our hardcore requirements, here's your mandatory recap module. Number 1, track granular value events, never vanity metrics. Number 2, layer in color and letter coding to isolate causality. And number 3, for B2B, individual seat activation is your early warning system. That brings us to today's takeaway. Visually spotting individual behavioral reality will save your attention far better than blindly trusting aggregate trend lines. Now, time for the data alignment check. How does the DAU engagement in your current project compare to your actual revenue conversions? Drop your data down in the comments below, and let's see exactly where your funnel is leaking. Hit leave a comment to also get the exclusive tool mapping framework from today's explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.